Welcome to the Guntersville Grassroots Podcast. This is episode number 2 of 2024. I'm kind of off of my normal every other week schedule. Trey's MIA, somewhere headed to an open. In his place today, local pro Bass Pro Tour pro Jacob Wall was kind enough to come sit down here with me. So, Jacob, welcome.
Thanks. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate it. I look forward to chatting about the lake and just a little bit about myself.
So Jacob is MLF Bass Pro Tour pro. That's a mouthful for me. Moved here from Oregon. Is that right?
Yeah. I grew up in Southern Oregon, so about 30 minutes from the California border. On the I-5 corridor, there's a city called Medford, Oregon. It's about the closest city you can get to the border besides Ashland, Oregon. I grew up there in a little town called Jacksonville. It's actually the first town in Oregon that they discovered gold. Pretty neat area. Not a lot of bass fishing. Really well known for like salmon, steelhead, trout fishing. And somehow I got into bass fishing over there and led me to Alabama.
Did you have to drive a long ways to bass fish over there?
You know, there's some local lakes, some smaller lakes, a couple 1,000-acre lakes that had some nice smallmouth in them, had some largemouth in them, but they're drawdown reservoirs. So there was, pretty large part of the year where they were real low, especially in the wintertime and early spring. So sometimes like that time of the year, I'd drive down to like Lake Shasta in Northern California, spotted bass fishery, real well known on the West Coast, a lot of spotted bass. So that was a little bit of a drive. Clear Lake. It's another place I fished quite a bit. Everybody probably knows Clear Lake if they know about bass fishing. Great big bass fishery, California Delta, that kind of stuff.
Did you catch any great big ones over there?
I never did catch any like giant fish out of Clear Lake. I've caught, some 7s and stuff. I remember one that really stands out to me. I caught it like a 7 1/4, I think it was, on a buzzbait. And that thing, I was practicing for a college tournament at the time. And I remember slinging it up under this dock and the fish just sucked the buzzbait down, like never made a ripple on the surface. My buzzbait's just going and it just goes 7 pounds.
Isn't it funny how those little things just stick in your head?
Yeah.
I don't know if you hunt or not, but sometimes whether it's hunting or fishing or whatever, you always end up with just little key moments that you just keep replaying in your head. It doesn't matter what it is. So how did you get to Alabama?
So I fished in high school and I fished in college, and right out of college, I decided that I was going to jump into the Costa Series, now Toyota Series, on the West Coast. And when I first jumped into it, it was actually like the largest field size we'd ever had on the West Coast. Like it was like 160 guys. Like they were actually pretty close to cap field size on the West Coast, which is really unusual. Now, if you look at the results for Toyota over there, it's like 90 guys. And so it's not as difficult to qualify. So when I first jumped into it, I mean, it was a pretty steep feat to qualify for the FLW Tour at the time, now MLF Invitationals. And first year out, I ended up qualifying for the FLW Tour and had to make a quick decision what I was going to do and where I was going to go. And right out of college, didn't have a lot of money to my name. So kind of had to figure out how to make ends meet and make that work. And, thankfully my parents really wanted to see me do my, live my dream, supported me. And so came out here for the 2018 Costa Series championship event on Guntersville. Really liked the lake, liked the area. And so this was kind of a place that we were looking at. I remember around that time, there was a Bassmaster article came out that was called like the Guntersville Effect.
That just popped in my head. Yeah.
And so that stood out. My mom showed me that. She's like, check this out. All these guys are moving to Guntersville. Maybe this would be a good place.
And they're
for you
still
to go.
coming.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I ended up out here.
And then got here and stayed. And if I remember correctly, you just got married.
Yeah. I've got a ring on my finger now. Did that back in September 2nd. So I was about to forget that. I can't forget that date.
No, you cannot.
No, that's a terrible thing. I mean, it's been way too soon for me to forget that date. No, just got married, to my wife, Michaela. And so we're here to stay, I think. I love it out here.
Oh, good. You clearly you were not born in the Southeast, because you do not get married the first weekend of college football.
Oh,
is
that right?
Yeah. I mean, you got college football starting was that probably Labor Day weekend?
Yeah. It was.
Yeah, that's normally the first weekend of college football, dove season. I think you clearly you're not from around here.
Yeah. So. Don't have my priorities right.
That's right. So, but I'm sure that your wife will be just as happy that you're not going to watch a college football game on your anniversary. So.
Yeah. I'm not a huge, I like football, but
Yeah,
it's not something that I get all
I
that
joke
wrapped
about
in.
that because sometimes people do get a little carried away with it. If you haven't noticed.
Yeah, Roll Tide. I mean,
Oh, no.
No.
We may have to stop right now. I'm an Auburn grad. My daughter's at Auburn. So.
Shoot, it's all the same thing. I don't know. Alabama, let's go.
Yeah, right, whatever.
I mean, University of Alabama? I don't know.
Yeah.
Go football.
Right. Yeah, you gotta pick one, I guess. So, so you fish Guntersville a lot, and
Yeah.
if anybody hasn't followed Jacob on social media, Instagram, Facebook, Instagram's probably bigger, but
Instagram's bigger. I'm on Facebook. I'm on YouTube. Everything that I do is just Jacob Wall fishing across the board.
Okay.
You check it out.
And so he makes a lot of posts, and things he's throwing and stuff like that, and that's kind of why I wanted to bring him in, because he's probably spent more time on Guntersville in the last 2 years than I have in the last 10, and just because of the nature of what he does. And we were talking before we pressed record here that when he's not traveling fishing tournaments, he's here and he likes to fish and he has the ability and time, so he fishes a lot. So it's February. What do you see happening on Guntersville right now?
So right now, we're kind of in the early stages of pre-spawn. I think that in the past, the lake has been dirtier. When I first moved here this time of the year, the lake would get a rainfall like we've had, and it would stay that color.
Yeah, we had some big floods there those years.
Yeah. But I noticed that it seemed like, I don't know if it was because there was more eelgrass. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it seemed like maybe there's more eelgrass now. I really don't know what it is, but the lake seemed like it stayed dirtier. And to me, it seemed like it kept those fish shallower a lot more of the time. Right now, from what I've seen, you've got fish kind of all over the place. You've got fish that are real pre-spawn, that are shallow, up there in 1 to 3 feet of water on these, eelgrass areas. Maybe there's a hard spot in the grass. Bass on Guntersville, I don't care what time of the year it is, 12 months out of the year, they gravitate towards shell bars, whether that shell bar is in 1 foot or whether it's in 25 feet of water. They like shell bars. Shell bars have life. They have bait fish. They just create like a hard spot for those fish to sit in, which then allows them to easily see what's around them. They can feed more effectively. I think that's the main reason why they like shell bars so much. So shell bars are really good. Like I said, whether it's on the top of a high spot, a point, a ledge, whatever it is, shell bars are holding fish right now. Lipless crankbait's really good this time of the year. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer. Everybody knows this time of the year on Guntersville, a red lipless crankbait, whether it's, red and orange, red, whatever it is, just that kind of variant is really good. Some of the ones that I like, like a one knocker or even a silent one, there's so many guys that throw that bait out on the lake right now that those fish, I don't know for a fact if they see it coming or hear it coming and then shut down, but I feel like I get bigger bites on quieter liplesses. So a silent one is actually pretty good. Chatterbait, same deal. You can mess around with different ones. The Thunder Cricket by Strike King. I'm not affiliated with those guys by any means. I throw that one. I throw a jackhammer and I throw a couple others. I personally think that Thunder Cricket, when the water gets below 50 degrees, is better. It has a little bit tighter vibration, kind of like if you're using like a flat-sided crankbait. That thing has a tight vibration. The jackhammer's got a little bit wider, harder thump. Thunder Cricket's got a little bit narrower, tighter thump. So that's really good. And then there's fish that live in these creek channels, and they chase bait. Those are more your bait oriented fish. And those are going to be fish that you're going to catch on an A-rig. You're going to catch on a swim bait. You're going to catch on, your suspended techniques, maybe a jerk bait if you see some of them swimming around up in the water column. And those are going to be more like your forward facing sonar fish. And there's guys that are going to be doing that as well.
Sure. And everywhere.
Yeah.
One question that I always ask, or was planning on asking later, but I'll ask now since you led into it. Can you win a tournament on Guntersville without forward facing sonar?
Right now,
a big tournament.
A 1 day, yes.
A 1 day, yes.
A 1 day, yes. Multi-day, no.
No.
I don't think so. No. I think you can get lucky and catch a 30-pound bag, mixing fish shallow, like catching like a big one here and then running over here and catching a big one. Maybe pull up on a bridge and throw an A-rig and catch a big one. If you get real lucky and catch like an 8 or 9 pounder, they're so fat right now. Like they're just absolutely bulging at the seams. So you catch like a 6.5, 7 pound frame in the summertime. Now that fish might weigh 8.5, 9.
Yeah.
So like, yes, you could win a 1 day. I don't think you could win like a 3 or 4 day tournament.
So like the Toyota Series is next week.
Yeah.
You think it'll take, I mean, there'll 100% be some forward facing sonar mixed in that.
Oh, yeah. I think it'll be probably won that way.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, probably. And I mean, look, man, I haven't only been out just a little bit the last couple of days. It's still deer season, and I'd like to deer hunt. But
sure.
But I got out last Friday because my Bass Cash Bash guy was in town and pulled up on the backside of the river channel, 8 foot, 9 foot grass edge, panned that thing live scope around and saw one swimming and threw an Alabama rig over it and caught it in 8 foot of water. I went, okay, I guess I buy into this. And I'm kind of new at it. I've had one a little while. I just got the new transducer and it's way different.
Sure.
But and I'm like, man, if you're catching fish in grass with that, when you really move to some other places, it's probably just crazy. So, and I know you're good at it. I mean, you proved that on, where'd you just come
Toledo
from?
Bend.
Yeah. That was the game out there, wasn't it?
It was. Everybody that was near the top, I think there was a couple of guys that were fishing shallow, and those guys are just dominant shallow fishermen. You got Octafo, the guy lives shallow, and
they're good at it.
Really good at it, the best at it. But the majority of the field, was fishing.
Not to jump lakes, but a quick question about that out there. Were those fish in predictable places, creek bends and stuff like that, or were they just roamers?
So they were kind of predictable. I didn't really figure out like the pattern, so to speak, like some of these guys did. Like so a lot of the guys that were like Connell that, he won, he figured out the pattern of what the fish that were suspended were doing. So like a lot of those fish that were on that lake were really high in the water column, just kind of like free roamers or high floaters, whatever you want to call them, just like nomadic fish that just basically thrive off of just swimming around eating shad or bait. They weren't relating to really anything structure-wise. They weren't relating to they were kind of relating to treetops sometimes. Like if the sun really came out and it got real bright, they'd get around some of that wood, that standing wood. But I mean, there was a lot of fish that were just swimming. My biggest fish of the week, I had big fish on day 2 of my group. And that fish wasn't related to anything. It was just swimming with a buddy of his out there in the open, 10 or 11 feet down over like 40 feet of water. And I just cast my little bait out there and he shot over and grabbed it, but they're just kind of random. I don't know what they're relating to. I tried to create consistencies on the contours, like maybe, hey, that even though they're up, maybe they're relating to certain things, but it was
like a blue-black, almost like a blue-black herring deal, but not, right?
Yeah. They were kind of loosely relating to drains, obviously Texas drain fishing, if, they get on the same stuff here in Guntersville, but a drain essentially is just like where your contours create almost like it either goes into a pocket. A drain could literally be like the bank comes into a corner and it's like a cove, so to speak, or it could actually just be like the contours create that, pinch point where they're deeper and wider at the mouth, and then it comes to a narrower point, and that's your drain. And they relate to that stuff out towards the mouth of it. So
hang out somewhere in the mouth, and then when it warms up or whatever, zoom right up and come right back out. So,
exactly,
and that happens here. You
exactly.
Yeah. And of course, you won't find a whole lot of drains around here now that don't have eelgrass all the way across them in some form or fashion. So
absolutely,
even out 12, 14 foot deep in places.
Yeah,
do you think? It's going down a different road here, but you mentioned throwing your little bait around on the forward facing sonar deal. Do you think that it's going to become a spinning rod deal everywhere you go to throw one of those little hover rigs or whatever they're mid strolling or whatever you call it to win the bigger things now? Are we cutting down on bait sales because we're only selling little shad imitators these days?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm watching, and I'm just a guy, and I'm watching, and, I watch some of the pro things. I have some friends and that fish some of them and kick around, and you just keep watching, and you're like, oh my gosh, everybody's got a spinning rod in their hand, and they're all, live scoping. Even here, I mean, you did really, really well here. Was it when Wheeler won last June? You were second, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I caught all those fish on a bait caster.
You did. You're right. And some of them you kind of opened up something that a few people already knew about on the
big swim bait.
You did catch those on a bait caster, but you did use forward facing sonar.
I did. So I'm learning with the times, but there's a certain time of the year. So like this time of the year when the fish are kind of lethargic and they're not, so like this time of the year, the fish are not really apt unless the water's gin clear. Spotted bass are a little bit more so they're going to move further for a bait just because they're naturally more aggressive fish and they're mean. But like a lake like Guntersville, where we get pretty much a stain through it most of the wintertime, and they're cold. I mean, right now the water's fluctuating from 46 to 49, depending on the warmth of the day. If you get a real bright, high sunny, day and it's calm, that surface might hit
just the surface though. It takes a while to reach,
So it's cold. So those bass don't want to move very far. So like this time of the year, it's hard to get them to chase stuff unless they're up shallow, and then it's more of a reactionary bite with that lipless. It's more of a reaction. But when you see those fish that are sitting out off the edges of the grass, or if they're sitting out on a shell bar, man, it's like you almost just got to leave something in front of them long enough for them to even find it. That's why a suspending jerkbait's so good, because you can just let it hover there, sit there in front of them and entice them, and then they'll get up on it. And then when it darts, they react to it. That little minnow, hover rig, small swim bait, light swim bait, that kind of stuff, it's just so enticing to the fish. It gets in front of them. If you can target them like you do with forward facing, it's just hard for them to resist it when you get it in front of them. When the water warms, like in the summertime on this lake, I catch a lot of big ones on a big spoon, and that's like they're chasing that sucker 10 feet up off the bottom. They're chasing a big 10XD down on the bottom, burning it, So I think as the water warms, maybe you can get away from seeing that as much. You'll see more guys maybe fishing a spinnerbait up shallow, flipping a jig. There's times of the year where you'll definitely see guys not be doing that stuff as much.
And of course, outside of Guntersville on certain lakes, it just depends on on when you're there. But as a whole, I mean, you just sit there and you watch and you're like, okay, they're on Toledo Bend, which is historically a wood. They have grass on Toledo.
Oh,
grass, wood,
yeah.
And everybody's out there live scoping.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a different world, and you love it or hate it. It's not as fun to watch on TV, but I do like watching. But you guys have got to play the game, or you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah.
So, what was your strengths before that came out? Like, what was your favorite way to fish before that was really a thing?
So when I first moved here, I would have told you that offshore fishing was my least favorite thing to do. I had no idea how to fish offshore. I grew up fishing lakes where if you got 30 feet off the bank, you were in 60 feet of water. Mm-hmm. They're steep Highland reservoir, drawdown type reservoirs. So for me, offshore fishing was kind of like totally unknown. Over the 5 years that I've lived here, I've grown to absolutely love offshore fishing. It is my number one favorite way to catch them. I love catching them when they're, there's a term that comes to mind, Matt Lee, he goes, I want to find them gummed up,
Gummed up,
stacked up, wadded up, whatever you want to call it. I love finding a group of fish, being able to sit there and know that, hey, I'm casting at a bunch of fish right now. Mm-hmm. And if I work my bait right or drag my bait right or twitch it right, I'm probably going to get a bite because I'm literally casting at 20 or 30 or 40 or sometimes in the summer 100 bass. That kind of stuff gets me, psyched.
Sure.
When I'm going down the bank throwing a spinnerbait and I randomly, throw it over a lay down and catch one, yeah, it might be cool. I saw him eat it, but man, to get that next bite, you got to find that next tree.
Changes your perspective a little bit on the way. Yeah, it's different. It really is. And electronics has made my first GPS was smaller than my cell phone, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I had a map on a computer that was about like the paper maps that we have laying around. And I'd pick out a spot and then I'd find a way to put it on here. And then I'd go out and idle around and I'd drop a buoy. And then I had a camera. You remember the old Aquaview? I guess they still make them. They've come a long ways probably, but I had one years ago. And I remember this place. We called it the Camera Hole that at Browns Creek on one of those many humps and ridges that are out there. But years and years ago, I found this one ridge out there and I dropped a buoy and, I had an old sonar, you out around, see some little arches. I dropped a camera down there. It was in the summer and it was when we had hydrilla, and the hydrilla came way out and it just kind of tapered off to 10, 11, 12 foot of water to the real hard shell bottom. And I dropped that camera down and I looked down there and I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all those fish. Big, swimming around everywhere. It took me 2 years to figure out how to catch them. Of course, you couldn't look at them like you can now. But you had to figure out the right angle, and it was better in the afternoons and when they were pulling water, but now you just kind of pan around and you go, oh look, there's some fish. Let's, and it's amazing to me the things that took me so long to learn. Mm-hmm. You guys, and particularly even like the high school fishermen now that are a fair amount younger than you, I mean, they're learning stuff that it took you a long time to learn in almost no time between YouTube and just the way the electronics are and the mapping has come, so there are no secrets anymore, really. I mean, no substitute for time on the water. you spend a fair amount of that.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned before we started recording that you had learned a lot on Guntersville that you carried to other places.
Guntersville is a great place to learn. It's a very diverse fishery. You can go catch fish pretty much year round in dirt shallow water all the way out to 25. I'll even say 30 sometimes. And I mean, they're on everything. Mm-hmm. I mean, I people ask me a lot, hey, what are the fish doing right now? How can I catch, how do I catch them out there right now? I'm kind of struggling. And I throw a lot of people bones, hey, try this. I've even given out some areas, some waypoints, even, to some local, if a guy comes into town and I get to chatting with him and I really, get a good vibe from him and I'm like, oh man, here, try this area over here, this could be good. But man, I just, the lake is just a great, diverse learning, place. I mean, I am able to go out there and catch them on rock, catch them on so many different things, grass, bridge piling, suspended fish. You can sight fish them in the summer or in the springtime, learn sight fishing. There's just a lot of different things you can learn. But I tell people there's always bass everywhere.
There really are. Yeah.
There's always bass everywhere.
The Guntersville fish did not read the rule book of this is where you're supposed to be at this time.
Yeah.
Now, is there a better way at certain times?
Yes.
Yes.
But there's always bass everywhere to be caught.
Yeah.
You could technically, if you got lucky, win a tournament, a one-day tournament, anywhere doing anything on this lake. Is there a better, more efficient way to probably win more often than not? Yes. But like you could go catch a 8 or 9 pounder doing something that like is like totally random. You could run all the way up to the Nickajack Dam and catch a giant one and then run back down and catch, it's so diverse and there's so many big fish and there's so many different places you can go do it. But there's definitely nuances and times of the year where certain things are better.
Sure. And it'll change a lot in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Do you think it's going to change between like right now where I don't see anything that's going to change it, but 47, 48, 49 degree water, we're going to be pretty steady for the next week or two. I mean, even with this warm spell, we're kind of getting over now. It's about to go back to being winter again. I mean, do you think it's going to change much? Is it going to be pretty much the same? I mean, it's not going to warm up a lot. I'm just curious if you think it's more calendar related or temperature related or moon related or.
I personally think this time of the year is something that's overlooked a lot that a lot of people don't talk about. I think the fish relate more to length of days than they do anything. So like, I think that fish this time of the year will get shallow to get ready to kind of spawn, but I don't think the mass schools of big ones do that really on this lake. Like some guys think that they might. I think that up the river where the lake is maybe a little bit more of a river where, you don't have as much like deep water besides the river channel. Because what happens up the lake is you've got the river channel, you've got some smaller, some creeks that come off of it. Once you hit like a North Saudi up, kind of your BB Comer section of the lake, you don't really have any deep water off the river unless you're out in the middle of a creek channel.
Right.
So those fish are more apt to get shallow and wad up, and you'll find groups of big ones and that kind of stuff. Those are more like your trap fish, your chatterbait fish, those types of spots. But as you get down the lake, I mean, you kind of get away from that. I think you don't see as many big groups of them get shallow. I don't think a ton's going to change. I think until those days start to get longer, I think it's more based off of a kind of a calendar, really.
That's where I was going with calendar, was with length of days. And I agree with that. My history is not worth what it used to be because the grass has changed so much. I mean, I grew up in Scottsboro and I left for a while for college, but I mean, I fished that lake since I was like 10. I'm 48. So, I mean, but on and off, but for the last 30, I fished it pretty steady but it's changed a lot. But, February, red clay banks, upriver, it's kind of been a given for a long time. Now the problem you run into is there's a mat of floating eelgrass on it and you can't make a cast. So,
yeah,
but that's changed things.
Absolutely.
It for sure has. So, I have a question, one more question for you, and then I guess we'll wrap it up. I'll let you get back to getting ready to go fishing. You're going fishing tomorrow, if you were, and you may be, I don't know. But you got 5 rods on your deck. Tell me what's tied on them.
So I definitely have a lipless bait. I probably have 2 lipless baits. I'd probably have one that's, it would be a 1-knocker or a silent one. I worked with a company in the past, Nishine Lure Works. They make a bait called a Simcoe 75. I still really like that lipless bait. It's a silent lipless bait, very thin, caught a lot of giant fish on that bait. I'd have that bait tied on in they make a dull chartreuse kind of color. That's a great color. And then I'd have like a 1-knocker in like a red color, I don't know if it really matters. Just a red variant, I like the Booyah one's really good. The Booyah 1-knocker. It's basically the old Excalibur.
Yeah. I weighed them. They weigh the same.
They're basically the exact same bait. The only reason you'd want the Excalibur is because it says Excalibur, I guess.
Somebody convinced them they were worth 3 times as much.
Yeah. Go on eBay and figure out which one you want to throw. Yeah.
Right.
I'm going to throw the Booyah one. That's good. Chatterbait's really good. I'd have an A-rig tied on. I'm actually fishing the BFL tomorrow. I don't know when this podcast comes out, it'll probably be done. But I think lipless, A-rig, chatterbait, jerkbait, and then I'll say spinning rod with a little jig head minnow.
Right.
Small swim
whatever
bait.
your choice is for that. Yeah. A lot of options.
A little 2.8 swim bait's really good on there. One that I actually catch them on really good this time of the year. Duckett makes a 3-inch subtle tail swim bait. It's got a really good body roll to it. Really good on like a 3/16 or a 1/4 ounce jig head.
Is that a straight tail or a paddle tail?
Paddle tail.
It's a paddle tail.
Yeah. But it's real. The name says it's subtle tail. It's a nice subtle swim bait, but it has a good natural swimming action.
Just put it on like a ball head.
Yeah, I use the Dirty Jigs guppy head. It's just like a small kind of ball head, but it's got eyes on it, a little more realistic. When you get down lower end of the lake, when the water, it's clear kind of in some of these areas right now, even though we've had some rain. And so a little bit more realistic. These fish are seeing so many baits. I think every little advantage you can get, realism, less rattles, all that kind of stuff, I think it matters. When you throw a rig, make sure all your baits are straight. That's such a pet peeve of mine. I see guys with an Alabama rig and half the baits are rigged upside down or sideways.
They're not running right.
Man, that just gets me going. I'm like, I want them to be perfectly straight. I think that matters. Try to make all the colors kind of mesh in your rig. A really good Alabama rig to throw. That's such a broad topic now. There's so many you can go buy. I'm not affiliated with them, but Diamond Baits, they make one called the Tight Wad. It's a shorter arm Alabama rig. It's a 3.5-inch wire. That Alabama rig on Guntersville is deadly.
Holds up good.
Really good. Like you can catch a couple hundred fish on it. One thing I really like about it is the clip on it is not your standard clip where you have to open it and then close it. It's actually like a loop that goes around and you put your eye on the loop, and when you twist it around the clip, it'll actually lock kind of into the clip. You don't even have to open anything. So when your fingers are freezing cold or when they're wet and they're all like shriveled up, like you've been sitting in the bathtub for like an hour.
Those ones are terrible to open.
It's horrible. They're like cut your fingers and stuff. These ones are really good. Diamond Baits, Tight Wad, really good Alabama rig, and comes with blades. It's a great rig. That's one that I'll be, that's one that I'd be throwing right
short. So it's short. Yeah.
Little compact. Fishes casts more like a spinnerbait than it does a big old beefy.
Do you throw them on 20-pound fluoro braid? But I've done both. I haven't really seen a difference personally.
I throw it on fluoro. Yeah, 20 to 22. Yeah.
So one more question, and I said I was done, but I'm not. So I thought of something else. One more question, just for people listening that are going fishing the first day here in the next couple of weeks, and you're going out, you're trying to break down eelgrass.
Yep.
It looks like carpet out there.
Absolutely.
And what are the key things that you're looking for when you're going in and breaking down like say the river?
Okay. You're still going to be focusing on your map more so than you are the actual grass. So like the grass is going to be, you're going to see the grass in certain sections of the lake, more prevalent than others. A lot of the grass this time of the year will stay better and cleaner and thicker depending on current. There's a lot of factors to it because this is Guntersville Lake, but realistically it's the Tennessee River. It's a river, this lake is a river, there's always current going through it. There's sections of this lake this time of the year, we're getting 50 to 90,000, cubic feet per second running through it. So it gets a lot of current running through it this time of year. So you get a lot of areas that have grass in the summertime that get cleaned off this time of year in hard bottom. So what you're looking for is you're looking for ditches where those contour lines get tight, where it's flatter on the edges, tighter in the middle. And those are going to be like your ditches. And then you'll fish the seam where the grass kind of fades out. Mm-hmm. But really looking for edges or holes. If you can find edges or holes, really you're not fishing like, you can go out there and just cast the lipless on top of a flat of grass, but what'll end up happening is you'll get a bite and you'll keep moving and you'll wonder why you're not getting bit for another 300-400 yards, and then you'll get another bite. But if you looked into those bites, you'd realize, hey, there was a hard spot right there, or hey, there's kind of an old creek channel that comes through here, and maybe it doesn't show up great on my map, but like if you side scan through there, you might see that there's like a little bit of a depression in the grass where it's, you know, tall around the edges, but then it kind of gets a little lower. It may not be hard, clean bottom, but it's just a little bit more room for those fish to sit. So definitely focus on the map, try to fish points, try to fish humps, try to fish, you know, your standard kind of stuff you would on any body of water. And then, you know, figure out where those spots are that those fish are holding.
Pay attention to each bite. Yeah.
Yes.
I had a guy 30 years ago. He said, boy, don't worry about that grass. Fish the structure, not the cover.
Yes.
You know, and of course we didn't know we were going to have a carpet on the bottom of the lake then. It was way different. Then the grass edges were not hard to find, and now they're a lot harder to find for sure.
They are.
Jacob, I can't thank you enough, man. It's good information. I hope some of the people listening appreciate it. Trey, I think we'll be back here in the next week or two. I may try to do one with him on the road just to make sure he's still alive. He's kind of funny about his phone when he's fishing, though. I get it. If I was young and could do that, I would too. So until next time, enjoy the floating grass. And Jacob, thank you again.
Thanks, Pat.